Right off the top, we are joined by a very special guest, as we have been joined by a few special guests over the last few days, focusing in on each one of the Giants' 6 picks. And today, we're going to turn our attention to their first-round pick, Kadarius Toney out of Florida, because before he headed to Florida, he starred at Mattie T. Blunt High School in Pritchard, Alabama. And we are now joined by the head football coach there, as well as the athletic director, Lev Holly. Coach, you got Lance Medow, Paul Dottino here on Giants.com, Big Blue Kickoff Live. Greatly appreciate the time this afternoon. Hope you and yours are safe and healthy. How's everything on your end?
Everything is fine, man. Just excited to be on and talk about Kadarius.
Absolutely, and it's a pleasure having you on the program. So let's start with how your relationship first came about in terms of the first time you got a glimpse of Kadarius Toney and how you really, Coach, honed in on where to showcase him on the high school football field, given such an eclectic group of skills that he could showcase.
Well, it first started off, I took the job in April of 2015. And I remember just like going through the first meeting the team first off. And, before I got a chance to meet the team, I got a chance to really look at film, evaluate film. And, I realized like the guy had some some intangibles that I thought could be really special. He was just a raw athlete. He was a competitor. And I just remember the first conversation, and I just told him, I said, man, you got a chance to be really special. And, if we're going to do it, it's going to be because of you. So wherever we go, you're going to take us. And he accepted it. He accepted the role and accepted the responsibility of being that guy. And I look at the success over this program over the last 6 years, and it definitely started with the Kadarius Toney and his era here at Blunt High School.
Coach, let me ask you about his maturing process. You've obviously known him a long time. I've seen comments where, you've mentored him as he has grown up and become a young man and now going to be an NFL player. Could you give us kind of a thumbnail sketch of how he has developed, not just on the field, but as a guy?
Well, I think it goes with maturity, and I'm going to take some credit, but I'm going to give more credit to his parents. I think they've done a wonderful job of raising him and keeping him just in a position that he's in of growing, and something that I can't sit here and just say that I've had everything to do with that, because I have. I think it takes a village to raise a child, and the village definitely raised Kadarius from his middle school to his high school, to the community, to the church, and to just outsiders. His personality stands out. But as far as him as a person, man, I don't think you meet a better person. Like I say, everybody saw the football side, but I know Kadarius as the person. So a lot of the things that I've watched him grow just from, not just, I know in high school, it got situations where, hey, man, I need you to play DB. Okay. Hey, I need you to to run down on kickoff. Okay. But, then making that transition, leaving out of high school, being a top-notch quarterback in the state of Alabama, one of the top two, if not the top quarterback in the state that year. You look at Blunt High School, over my 2 years, he threw for right at 600 to 800 yards, all right at 100 touchdowns, had 5 1,000-yard receivers in 2 years. So, you look at the success rate, it was very high, but to be able to put that aside, and I think that's what brought Florida out. Florida was really honest through the recruiting process. They didn't blow no smoke. They pretty much told him, like, hey, you're coming in as a quarterback. If you win the job, great. If not, then, hey, you're too talented not to be on the field, and we'll move you to a receiver. So when that happened, he took it. He had to go in and learn his craft. And I think Coach Mullen is not a knock against Coach McElwain and his, the success that he had down there. But I thought Coach Mullen's system fit Kadarius a lot more. I think Kadarius was more of a person harboring in that system. You go back and look at Florida in 2006 to 2007, 2008, when they was making those runs, Person Harbor was the guy. And I think he made everything go. So, I think it says a lot about him. And I think this year you gave him those years to start developing as a receiver and learning the game at that position. And I think that's why the New York Giants selected him 20th overall.
Coach, if I could ask you just to follow up and rewind it just a tad when he's deciding what he wants to do in terms of his college selection, I had read that Alabama made a late push after he had already committed to Florida. I wonder how things might have turned out if he wound up with the Crimson Tide and Nick Saban. And, of course, he probably would have run into Joe Judge there, too, had he gone to Alabama.
Well, I think it didn't matter where he was going to go. He was destined for the position that he's in right now. Not because of his football skill, but because of what he brings to the table. He's a very likable guy, lovable guy in the locker room. And I think that says a lot about who you are on the field. And I was just telling somebody today, that you can teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. And I think the biggest thing about that is that Kadarius is just a guy. I mean, and when he walks in the room, you know he's there. And, and it's not so much what he says, it's because of his actions. I've seen him take his shirt off his back and give to one of his brothers, take his shoes off, give to a brother. And when those things happen, because I think when you're a better person, you're going to become a better player. So, and I think those are the things that, from a cultural side that we try to instill every single day, that everything that we done was about being great fathers. It was about being great husbands. It was about being great professionals. And it was about being great citizens. And I think this world today needs those four characters.
Coach, a big part of playing the quarterback position is understanding the mental side of things when it comes to the game of football. I'm curious, over the years in which he played the quarterback position for you, and then you see, as you pointed out, how much he's evolved as a football player, being utilized as a weapon essentially at Florida, how much do you think his experience at quarterback opened up his eyes to understanding really just about every position on offense and giving him that much more flexibility as a player as he joins the New York Giants?
I think it was huge. I mean, there's no way that, and how a lot of coaches coach quarterbacks just to play the position, but, we coach quarterbacks to play the game. And I think that's been one of the biggest assets of Kadarius. He was taught how to play the game. He understood protections. He understands blitzers. He understands throwing the hot route. So in order to do all that, and we put a lot on Kadarius. Most people don't know that when Kadarius got to the line, Kadarius had 3 plays to run, and he could call at any time, and we trust him. The only time we told him was third down, you pretty much run what's called, unless it's more of a short situation. So, I mean, that's kind of, if you want to talk about IQ, the IQ is very high for the game anyway. So you add great IQ, you add athletic ability, you add just pretty rawness, you add competitor, you add a human joystick. I mean, you getting the total package, But I think he's equipped to do that kind of stuff because he not just learned to play the quarterback position, but learn how to play the game, and get some experience on defense, understanding what receivers trying to do. I think all of that goes into play. Because sometimes, when you see in the blitz, you got to check that hot route. You got to run away from the call. So I think all that stuff, man, plays hand in hand. So I'm not surprised of his success at all. Like I said, I've never worried about Kadarius in any phase. I just knew that he was going to be a guy that would be there, get it done, and if he got that opportunity, he was going to make the best out of it. And I could see him being in the league a long time, forbid those injuries.
Coach, you told one of your local newspapers, and I'm going to read this quote, just a guy who plays the game with a different passion. We've seen a lot of guys who love to win, guys who hate to lose, guys who give 150% on the field. Could you give me an example of what you meant when you said that about him specifically?
Well, I think it goes with the how factor. I mean, if you look at a lot of my tweets, I'm going to hashtag and I'm going to say highway. I'm going to capitalize the H, lowercase the O, capitalize the W, lowercase the A, and capitalize the Y. So if you take those capital letters, it means highway. When you're on a highway, you have a straight path, you have a bumpy path, you have a curve, you have a hill, you have a downhill slope, uphill slope. So you get everything in between. And, so when I say he plays with a different passion, it goes back to the how. It's how you win. It's how you lose. You know, how do you accept mediocrity? How do you accept success? How do you accept failure? So basically it goes back into understanding the how factor. So it talks about, you know, a mentality versus a Z mentality. So A being attitude, Z being success. But in between that A and Z is a hyphen. And that hyphen goes back and it ties into that highway of you never know what you're going to encounter. You just have to go on the ride. So if you have to stop at a red light, you have to wait in traffic, then, hey, guess what? It's about the destination. It's about getting to that journey. It may take longer. It may be a shorter route. Who knows? But it's about how you do those things and how well, you know, that you go in and you accept every responsibility and accept what comes with being successful, accept with some failure. You know, so, I mean, so when I said that, it basically goes back to the how factor.
We're talking with Lev Holly, the high school head football coach at Blount High School in Pritchard, Alabama, where he coached Kadarius Toney, the Giants' first-round pick in this year's draft. Coach, earlier, I want to piggyback off of a point you brought up. You factored in the fact that the Florida offensive scheme, you said, was a really good fit for Kadarius Toney's skill set. And if we just look ahead to perhaps how the Giants can utilize him, it would be very surprising if they don't try to tap into some of the similar things that Florida utilized, including perhaps even tapping into his arm as a quarterback, given Jason Garrett utilized Golden Tate, another former quarterback, in that role last season. What does it say about Toney, the fact that he can keep on top of all of these different roles and continue to improve when in any given game, Coach, they may emphasize him as a running back, they may emphasize him as a wide receiver, they may emphasize his arm? What does that say about how he's evolved as a football player?
Basically, it pretty much describes you better know where he is on the field. And that's one thing. And, I mean, as a defensive-minded guy who had been really successful as a coordinator, he's that guy that I'm going to always know where he is on the field. And I'm going to have different packages, you know, and a lot of times it's tough because, you know, you see this guy out in the slot, okay? Most times, 9 times out of 10, he's probably on your third best defender on the field, okay? You see him out wide, he can run by you, okay? Well, once he goes in motion, it's an adjustment that has to be made. You have to keep boxing integrity. I think the Giants have a really good problem with Saquon Barkley. He comes back healthy. Daniel Jones, I think, is a top-notch guy in the intermediate game. Darius Slayton can cover the field. So, you know, but then you go back in that same concept, and he's the most all-simple. He's a quarterback. What do? He's not that just because you just think, hey, most guys getting Wildcat, he's a runner. Well, he is a passer, too. So, you know, you have a lot to think about, and there's a lot that he put a lot of pressure on defense to be really based, to really have to adjust and really have to be sound at what you're doing. So, you know, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm pretty sure if the Giants don't do it, then, hey, they need to call me to come coach it. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that? You know what I mean? But I think that when it's all said and done, I mean, I really see him being really successful at that level because there's one thing I know. It ain't many in the league that's going to outwork you. You know, like I say, man, I think he did. He took it. You know, instead of training in Florida, he went all the way across the country to train, which I think that says a lot about him. You know, and I tell people all the time, at times I'll call him and I may not get him. It may be 3-4 days before he called me back or, you know, and that's fine. But the one thing that I know that he's doing what he loves and he's working at it, he's perfecting his craft. You know, the one thing that we talked about, you know, we talked during the Senior Bowl a lot, and I told him, you know, hey, this is the point, you know, you got to clock in, you know, and that was one thing that we talked about every day about, you know, with culture, you know, about bricks, you know, laying bricks. And a lot of times, you know, we talked about, you know, when people see all these brick buildings and they pay attention to the bricks and how good it looks, but not how many times do people pay attention to the mortar that hold that brick together. So I think KT is a guy that he is the martyr in a lot of things that he does, And, I know he took some criticism on some stuff, and I think it was my job to go out and say, hey, man, I know him as the person, and that was one thing that, I was really big on the stereotype. Don't stereotype my guy. Know him before you do that. And I think once you get to know him, you erase every last one of those words that you said.
Coach, kind of along those lines, how critical or how much of an advantage do you think it is that the Giants have some assistant coaches on their staff who were in the NCAA level and they recruited Toney when he was coming out of high school? Jeremy Pruitt is one of the names that immediately comes to mind. Do you think their familiarity with him and vice versa will assist in his transition as he comes into the NFL and specifically as he adapts to New York and the Giants? I'm going to assume he's probably never been here before.
I don't know if he has or not, but I know this. You have Jeremy Pruitt, who is an Alabama native. You have Jody Wright, who was at Alabama. You have Kevin Shearer, that was also, and those are high school guys. So they get it. Jeremy Pruitt is the one that if you go back and look in history, the number of guys that he signed out this area, it is unreal, and they've been really successful. And I think Jeremy is a really good coach. But the one thing about Jeremy Pruitt is a hell of a person, and he's a guy that's going to help you. Jody Wright, he's been really successful being one of Coach Saban's right hand. So I think it says a lot. I think it's really helpful, that you're away from home, you got somebody that you do have a relationship with. But that, and I'm saying, and I hope every younger kid that has aspiration to play college ball is listening, relationships are so important because you never know in this profession, you never know who's going to coach you. And I think that's one important, this is a lesson that can be learned that, when you're on that recruiting trail and coaches want to talk to you, be diligent about what you do and do it with a bunch of integrity because, the same bridge you burn may be one you have to come back across. So, I think it's big that those guys out there, and I think it's kind of one of those situations that, man, it's kind of it was a no-brainer when everything came to fruition.
Yeah, it's a reflection to your point, Coach. It's such a small world within the football community. You never know who you're going to cross paths with maybe in high school that you'll eventually once again meet on the NFL level, which certainly you and Kadarius Toney can attest to as he comes full circle here with a lot of familiar faces with the New York Giants. Talking about character and perhaps the things that people don't notice about Kadarius Toney, I found it interesting, Coach, that earlier this year your school retired his number, where I'm not saying that I'm taking a poll across the country, but I would say that's pretty unique and rare that even before a guy gets to the NFL level, they're already honoring him at his high school and making sure that nobody else ever wears that number. How did that process come into play, and what do you think that says about Toney's impact in a very small period of time since he even left that program?
Well, you got to realize the history. That was me being here. That was my first quarterback when I got here. But the impact, in 6 years, we've signed over 50-plus guys to college scholarships. 50 in a matter of 6 years. And this is football is these guys' way out. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. Whether it's at a Division I level all the way down to the NAIA level. But these guys come and they pour their heart and soul into it. And Kadarius, in my era, he was the foundation of it. So you look at, the guys he was throwing it to, Reginald Todd, who's going to have a chance to get drafted against the upcoming year. Lee Hunter, who's at Auburn, George Williams, Armando Diamond, D'Angelo Anderson, Mario Dungy, Kobe McCovery. But it all stems back to, and Blunt always have had a tradition and guys came through, but the one thing that we came in is that we wanted to make it where when coaches came in, they didn't have to worry about kids being eligible. They didn't have to worry about character. We wanted kids, not but kids. When you talk about a Kadarius Toney Kadarius is this and, not a Kadarius this but, so, make it in the and more and not about the but. But when it comes to hanging it on the wall, you're talking about a kid who threw for right at 9,000 yards in his career, over 100 touchdowns plus, and the impact that, and it's bigger than the field, the impact that he had on the kids up under him. So you talk about a guy that has paid it forward, man, that guy has paid it forward. So, I felt obligated, and it was like a no-brainer. When I mentioned it to the principal, he was like, Coach, I agree. And, and there it is. So that's pretty much the history of it. And, that's what it is.
Final one for me, Coach. What is the one thing that you would love to see happen for Toney during his rookie season with the Giants above all else?
Just stay healthy. I think if he stays healthy, and I know in football there are injuries and there's nagging injuries, but if he stays healthy, he's going to rip it up. Watch what I tell you. You heard it here first.
I believe you.
And Giants fans certainly wouldn't complain from that standpoint. Coach, before we let you go, and we certainly appreciate the time and the insight, the other thing that he took part of at the high school level was he was a track and field athlete, which I don't necessarily think is surprising, but when you're focusing in on the quarterback position as you worked with him on the high school level, how much did you work with him to maybe focus in on specific skill sets that you think would help him later on in his career to make it a little bit more structured, as opposed to him really going all over the place in terms of his athletic prowess?
Well, the one thing about, we share a bunch of athletes. A lot of over, I guess, 75, 80% of our athletes are two-sport athletes. And the ones that are not are the ones that have jobs. So, they're constantly doing something. But football and track, I think, goes hand in hand. If you can learn how to run, with his natural skill set, but can learn those little small techniques of a trackster, I think that's when people doubted, okay, he has all the moves, shifty, he's a real shifty guy. On a straight line, how fast is he? I think that's when that 4.39 kicked in. I'm going to be honest with you. But then one thing about the track, when you're on the track, you can't hide. You either have it or you don't have it. So I think that's just it. And that's a competitor. You got to compete in track. Because you got guys that, hey, they may not be strong, but they're just faster. They beat you on technique. I was listening to, like, one of the premier track coaches down here, and he was saying, I could never beat this guy. He said, but then I realized this. We sitting there, and we're staggered. They got me boxed in. He said, but I'm listening. I started listening with my ears, and I hear him take one or two deep breaths. I know right then I got him. So it's a little small detail stuff, man. And I think that stuff, if you get those small detail things, I go back, and again, and not only detail, but when you can apply it and make it about application, that's how you create greatness. I can sit in the classroom, but if I can't apply what the teacher's teaching me, I can't pass the test. But if I can apply what they're doing, if I can plug in the numbers from the board to the formula, guess what? I'm gonna get the answer. Same thing about life. So, just very excited for him, and like I said, man, I expect great things, and we love him. We love all our guys. And think about it, like I tell people all the time, the day that it starts being about me and not about these kids, then hey, that's the day it's time for me to walk away. But like I said, I'm very honored. I'm very thankful. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to coach him. And that's all my players, not just theirs. And like I tell people all the time, without parents, we don't have kids, and without kids, we don't have jobs. So, but I think it's about the foundation. I think it's about the growth and the maturity, and I think it's about, just keeping God first in everything that you do. And when it's all said and done, just give honor and give praise to God and thank him for this opportunity.
And a huge opportunity lying ahead now for Kadarius Toney the first-round selection for the New York Giants in the 2021 draft. He is Lev Holly. He coached him in high school at Matty T. Blunt High School. He's also the athletic director there. Coach, can't thank you enough. We greatly appreciate the time and the insight. Best of luck with your upcoming season, and we look forward to talking to you down the road. Thanks again.
Thanks, Coach.
Yes, sir. Thank you.